The blue light from the quantum relay cast strange shadows across the emergency council chamber as the final message arrived. Admiral Kim Hannah watched the holographic display with growing dread, her hands clasped behind her back as the galaxy's most powerful civilizations announced their defeat one by one. Commander Park Min-ho's voice cracked as he read the reports. The Zelthari Empire pulled back all their crystal ships an hour ago. The Vorthok Federation just sent word they're doing the same. He looked up from his datapad, his young face pale. Admiral, they're all running? The chamber buzzed with alien voices as the ambassadors tried to explain their retreat. The tall Zelthari ambassador, his body made of living crystal that caught the light like a prism, spoke in musical tones about moving to safer positions. The spider-like Vorthok clicked and chittered about cutting their losses, but Hannah could see the truth in their strange eyes and glowing energy fields. They were scared. The Void Swarm had eaten 17 entire star systems in just 2 months, not conquered them or occupied them, but consumed every living thing on every planet, leaving nothing but dead rocks spinning in empty space. The combined fleets of 3 galactic empires had tried everything they could think of. Bombs that could crack planets, weapons that bent gravity itself, even artificial black holes. Nothing had stopped the swarm's advance. Ambassador Valthus stepped closer to Admiral Hannah, his crystal body ringing like wind chimes with each movement. "Earth Commander," he said, his voice like distant music. "Your people are young but clever. Do not throw away such promise on a battle that cannot be won. Take your ships and flee to the outer colonies while you still can." The chamber fell quiet, except for the soft humming of the life support systems. Hannah could feel every alien eye watching her, waiting for her answer. Some looked at her with pity, as if she were a child who didn't understand the danger. Others seemed curious, wondering what the human would do. Hannah walked to the center of the chamber, her military boots clicking on the metal floor with each step. She looked at each ambassador in turn, from the crystalline Zelthari to the insectoid Vorthok, 2 species she barely recognized. "A long time ago," she said quietly, "my ancestors lived in caves and had nothing but sharp rocks and fire to protect themselves. But they didn't give up when the winter came or when the big animals hunted them. They crossed ice that could kill. Them sailed on oceans during terrible storms and shot themselves into space on rockets that barely worked." She stood straighter, her voice growing stronger. "We humans have one big problem. We never learned how to quit when things get hard." The Admiral's eyes swept across the assembled aliens. "Humanity will fight. We'll make our last stand, right?" Here at Earth, some of the ambassadors looked sad, as if they were watching someone choose to die. Others seemed impressed despite themselves. Within 6 hours, the last alien warship had jumped away from the Sol system, leaving Earth completely alone as the Void Swarm came closer. But something unexpected started happening as soon as the alien fleets departed. Every human ship scattered across the galaxy began receiving the same simple message broadcast on all frequencies: "Come home. Earth calls her children back." Mining ships that had been digging in asteroid belts for decades suddenly changed course. Colony transports that were heading to distant worlds turned around. Corporate freighters abandoned their cargo routes. Research vessels exploring the galaxy's edge began the long journey home. Even the smallest shuttlecraft and private ships started moving towards Sol. Dr. Lee Salmon stood in the communications center watching the tracking displays with wonder. Thousands of tiny dots were converging on Earth from every direction. "Admiral D," she called out, "we're getting responses from ships I didn't even know existed. There are humans out there who've been gone so long they almost forgot where they came from." Captain Yoon Ji-hoon, who commanded one of Earth's few remaining warships, smiled as he read the incoming messages. "Listen to this one, Admiral. It's from a cargo hauler near the Vega system. This is Captain Sung Murray on the freighter Dancing Bear. We're carrying mining equipment, but we can carry weapons too. See you at home." For the first time in human history, every human in the galaxy was coming back to the same place. Not because they had to, but because Earth had asked them to come home and fight. They came in ships designed for trade, for exploration. For carrying passengers, they came with mining lasers and construction equipment and whatever else they could turn into weapons. Admiral Hannah stood at the observation deck, watching the first returning ships appear as bright dots against the stars. Her communications officer approached with a data tablet showing the numbers. "How many are coming back?" she asked. "All of them, Admiral," came the reply. "Every single human ship in the galaxy is heading home." The Void Swarm was still coming. Still hungry? Still apparently unstoppable? But for the first time since the crisis began, Hannah felt something besides fear. The scattered children of Earth were coming home to stand together, and maybe that would be enough to change everything. Dr. Lee Soman wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the glowing blue blueprint floating in front of her workstation. The luxury cruise ship spinning slowly in the hologram looked nothing like the elegant vessel that once carried rich tourists to see the rings of Saturn. Now it bristled with weapons like an angry metal porcupine. 6 months ago, the ship Harmony had 5 swimming pools, 20 restaurants, and a spa that could massage stress away, she told General Cho Dae-sung as he studied the plans. Now, it has missile launchers where the dining rooms used to be, fighter bays where people once danced, and a giant fusion ram on the front that can punch holes through anything. All around them, in the converted shipyard, thousands of people worked like busy ants. Engineers crawled over half-built warships, welders sent bright sparks flying through the air, and computer specialists typed frantically at their screens. Everyone knew the Void Swarm was getting closer to Earth. Every day, the military leaders had spent weeks studying how the alien empires had fought the swarm. Every battle had been the same story. The aliens lined up their warships in neat formations, fired their biggest weapons, and got eaten alive. Traditional space warfare simply did not work. Against an enemy that could grow new ships from the bones of dead planets, Captain Yoon Ji-hoon crawled out from under a cargo freighter, his uniform stained with engine oil and his face lit up with excitement. "Dr. Lee, you have to see what we did to the Soul Pride," he called out, pointing at the massive ship behind him. "We took off all the cargo containers and stuck mining lasers on every surface. These things can cut through solid rock like butter. I bet they'll work just fine on swarm monsters, too." The shipyard buzzed with similar projects. Passenger liners became missile boats. Cargo haulers turned into drone carriers. Even small personal shuttles were getting weapon upgrades. But the real magic happened when ordinary people started sharing ideas that no military academy had ever taught. Engineer Nam Yura gathered a small crowd around her computer. Display showing their first big innovation? "We call them ghost ships," she explained, her eyes bright with pride. "Here's how it works. Turn off all the power, vent all the air into space, and just float there like a piece of junk. The swarm scouts fly right past us because we look dead. Then, when they're not expecting it, we turn everything back on and blast them from behind." Communications specialist Bae Ji-soo was working on something even more clever. She had figured out how the swarm's hive mind worked, like millions of insects all thinking together through radio signals. "I can't break their communication," she admitted to the group, "but I can make it very noisy. Think of it like jamming a radio station. When I send my viral codes into their network, all the swarm creatures start getting confused messages. They don't know which way to go or what to attack." General Cho looked at all the strange new weapons and tactics with growing amazement. Alien military schools taught their students to follow strict rules and fight in organized patterns. Humans were doing the exact opposite. They were making up new rules as they went along, using whatever they could find and turning chaos into their greatest weapon. The best ideas came from people who had never been soldiers at all. Chef Park Min-soo, from a luxury restaurant, understood how pressure and heat could be used as weapons. Mechanic Kim Guan, who had spent years fixing broken ships, could spot weak points in swarm bioarmor that military engineers missed. Even artist Song Hai-jin contributed by helping design attack patterns that moved in 3 dimensions instead of the flat formations that aliens preferred. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, former tour guides who used to show tourists the pretty Space Orcs were now learning to pilot armed shuttles through the debris fields. The asteroids that once provided scenic backdrops for vacation photos were being turned into hiding spots and weapons platforms. Long-range sensors brought regular updates that made everyone work faster. The swarm had reached Jupiter and was systematically eating the planet's moons, turning their ice and rock into material for new bioships. The massive alien creatures moved in perfect formations, following the same patterns they had used to conquer 17 star systems. Dr. Lee watched the sensor, readings showing thousands of swarm bioships approaching in neat, organized lines. Each creature was the size of a city and covered in organic armor that had shrugged off every weapon the galactic empires could build. They expected to find Earth defended by standard military tactics, rigid battle formations, and predictable strategies. She smiled as she looked around the shipyard at all the converted civilian ships, the improvised weapons, and the civilian volunteers learning to fight in ways no military manual had ever described. The swarm had conquered world after world by adapting to conventional warfare, but they had never faced anything like human creativity before. They had never fought an enemy that could turn a cruise ship into a battleship, a mining laser into a weapon of war, or chaos itself into a battle plan. They were about to learn why humans had survived and thrived on a dangerous planet by Earth fighting fair when their survival was at stake. The real war was about to begin, and Earth was ready to show the galaxy what human ingenuity could do. The first swarm bioships appeared at the edge of Saturn's rings, like giant black shadows against the golden light of the distant sun. Captain Han Suji gripped the command chair of her converted cruise ship as alarms blared throughout the bridge. The luxury liner that once carried happy families on vacation trips was now humanity's front line of defense. 30 bioships detected and closing fast, reported Lieutenant Kong Haram from the sensor station. She had been a dance instructor on the ship just 6 months ago, teaching children how to waltz in the ballroom. Now she tracked enemy movements with the same precise attention she once gave to music and movement. The swarm creatures moved in perfect formation, just like they had when conquering 17 other star systems. Their bioships were living things, grown rather than built, with organic armor that could heal itself, and weapons that fired concentrated acid. Each one was larger than Earth's biggest cities, and they expected to sweep through Saturn's rings like they had swept through every other defense. But Saturn's rings were no longer the beautiful tourist attraction they had once been. Engineer Namura and her teams had spent months turning every chunk of ice into a weapon. Hidden inside the glittering debris were explosive charges, missile launchers, and kinetic accelerators that could hurl house-sized rocks at incredible speeds. All ships, this is Admiral Kim Hanna, came the voice over the communication system. Remember, we don't fight like the aliens do. We use the rings as our fortress. Stay hidden, move fast, and hit them where they don't expect it. Captain Han watched her crew prepare for battle. Her weapons officer, Oh Min-jae, had been the ship's entertainment director, organizing game nights and talent shows for passengers. Now he controlled enough firepower to level a small city. Chef Kim Do-yeon had volunteered to handle the boarding preparations, claiming that anyone who could manage a busy kitchen during dinner rush could handle combat logistics. The first bioship entered the rings expecting clear passage to Earth. Instead, it triggered a carefully planned trap. Explosives hidden in the ice detonated in a chain reaction that sent massive chunks of frozen water spinning through space like missiles. The bioship's organic armor cracked under the bombardment, green fluid leaking from the wounds. A direct hit on target 1 called out Oh Min-jae with satisfaction. Those cooking skills really paid off, Chef Kim. Your timing was perfect, but the real battle was just beginning. Human ships darted between the ring debris like ancient fighter planes flying through mountain canyons. The converted passenger liner Busan Dream used the ice chunks as cover while its crew fired mining lasers that could cut through solid rock. The cargo freighter Seoul Pride launched swarms of small drones that attacked the bioships like angry wasps. Lieutenant Commander Chen Soyoung piloted her fighter through a gap barely wide enough for her ship, 3 swarm pursuit craft chasing her through the deadly maze. She learned to fly by giving aerial tours of Earth's mountains to tourists. Now she used those same skills to lead the enemy ships into a trap. This is Blue 7, taking them through the ice field. She radioed to her wingman. Park Rena, you ready with those charges? Ready when you are, Soyoung? Just get clear when I give the signal. The explosion sent chunks of ice the size of buildings, spinning through space, crushing the pursuing bioships like a giant's fist. Soyoung pulled her fighter into an impossible turn that would have killed most alien pilots from the gravitational forces. But humans had evolved on a world with strong gravity and were built to survive such stresses. Captain Han's ship shuddered as swarm weapons found their target. The elegant cruise liner that once hosted weddings and anniversary celebrations was now locked in deadly combat with creatures from the void between stars. But her crew, made up of people who had spent their careers making passengers happy, refused to give up. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Engineer Park Rena, who had been the ship's spa manager. "Sealing it now. And Captain, the kitchen staff wants to know if they should prepare for boarding action." Han almost smiled despite the danger. "Tell them to get their sharpest knives ready. You might need them." The battle raged for 12 hours. Human ships appeared and disappeared among the ice like ghosts, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before the swarm could respond. The bioships, designed to fight organized military fleets in open space, struggled to adapt to this three-dimensional maze of debris and hidden weapons. When Captain Han's ship finally rammed into a bioship's weak spot, her crew boarded the alien vessel, wearing nothing but spacesuits and carrying whatever weapons they could improvise from ship's equipment. Chef Kim led the boarding party with kitchen knives and welding torches. While the former entertainment staff used their knowledge of crowd control to coordinate the attack, the cost was terrible. 30% of Earth's small fleet was destroyed, or damaged beyond repair. Good people died fighting creatures that had conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants. But when the surviving bioships finally retreated beyond the outer rings, something unprecedented had happened. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm had been stopped. News of the battle spread through the galaxy on refugee communication networks. On distant worlds where alien civilians hid from the approaching swarm, they watched fuzzy recordings of human fighters, laughing as they jury-rigged weapons from kitchen appliances and turned luxury ships into warships. Some began to whisper words that hadn't been spoken in months. Perhaps the war isn't over after all. The message appeared on Admiral Kim Hanna's command screen 3 weeks after the battle at Saturn, glowing with the strange blue light that meant it had traveled across half the galaxy to reach Earth. Communications. Officer Song Yoonji stared at the translation with wide eyes before calling out in excitement. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely containing her amazement. "It's from a Zelthari military unit that's supposed to be hiding behind their homeworld's shields." The text scrolled across the screen in neat lines. "This is Colonel Vexera of the 3rd Crystal Wing. We have been watching your battle tactics. We want permission to try your ghost ship methods in the Kepler sector. The swarm thinks we are defeated, but we are still here." Admiral Hanna read the message twice, hardly believing what she was seeing. The crystalline aliens had been the first to retreat when the swarm invasion began, declaring the war impossible to win. Now they were asking Earth for advice on how to fight back. "That's not the only one," Admiral Song continued, her fingers dancing over her control panel. "I'm getting similar messages from 17 different star systems. Corvani engineers want to know how we sabotage swarm bioships. Vorthok fighter pilots are asking about our hit-and-run tactics. Even civilian groups are requesting copies of our battle plans." The phenomenon was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Earth's desperate tricks, born from having nothing left to lose and too much human stubbornness to surrender, were inspiring other species to pick up their weapons. Again. Across the galaxy, aliens who had accepted defeat were starting to believe they could fight back. Dr. Lee Soman had been working day and night with her expanded team, which now included alien scientists and engineers working in secret from their home worlds. "The Corvani are amazing builders," she explained to the morning strategy meeting. "They're using our sabotage methods to attack swarm facilities from inside their own territory. They can get into places we never could." She pulled up a holographic display showing technical diagrams covered in alien script. "And look at this. The Zelthari figured out how to make their crystal ships completely invisible when they hide in asteroid fields. They're perfect for our surprise attack tactics." General Chodazung studied the galactic map projected above the conference table. Red zones showed where the swarm controlled entire star systems. But now yellow dots were appearing throughout the red areas like tiny flames in the darkness. Each yellow indicator marked resistance activity, secret attacks, and sabotage missions. "The aliens are taking our basic ideas and making them work with their own special abilities," he said with growing excitement. "Species that we thought were completely different from humans are finding ways to fight like we do." The most important development came from Lieutenant Commander Chen Soyang, who had been monitoring enemy communications from her intelligence station. "We've been broadcasting something we call the Human Manual on every frequency we can reach," she reported. "It's basic instructions for fighting the swarm using guerrilla warfare, adapted for different alien species." She brought up recordings of swarm hive mind communications, showing the strange patterns that the creatures use to coordinate their attacks. Something interesting is happening. The swarm's group mind is starting to slow down when it faces truly random and unpredictable resistance. They were designed to fight organized armies, not this kind of scattered chaos. On Earth itself, the preparations had become almost frantic. Every major city was now connected to underground tunnels that led to bomb-proof bunkers carved deep into solid rock. The planet's surface looked like one giant fortress. Hidden weapon platforms and supply storage areas scattered across every continent. Even the smallest towns had defensive positions and escape routes. But the real change was something nobody could measure with sensors or count on tactical displays. For the first time since the war began, hope was spreading across the galaxy. Species that had given up were starting to believe that victory might actually be possible. They had watched grainy video footage of humans standing alone against impossible odds, not just surviving but actually winning. And it had changed something fundamental in how they thought about the war. Engineer Namura worked at her station, translating human tactics for different alien physiologies. "Corvani engineer sent us plans for a bioship trap that uses their natural tunneling abilities," she said, excitement clear in her voice. "And the Vorthok have figured out how to use their energy manipulation powers to disrupt swarm hive communications." The long-range sensors brought regular updates that made everyone work harder. The swarm's main invasion fleet was gathering beyond the edge of the solar system, like a dark storm cloud full of death. 10,000 bioships, each one capable of consuming an entire world, moving in perfect formation toward Earth. But they would not find humanity defenseless and alone this time. The fire that Earth had lit by refusing to surrender was spreading from star to star. Across the galaxy, in hidden bases and secret meeting places, aliens who had once cowered in fear were sharpening their weapons and making plans to fight back. Admiral Hannah stood at the observation window watching the stars, knowing that behind many of those distant lights, former enemies were becoming allies. Humanity had done more than just win a battle at Saturn. They had reminded the galaxy that some things were worth fighting for, no matter how hopeless they seemed. The real war was about to begin, and this time, Earth would not be fighting alone. The darkness at the edge of the solar system suddenly filled with shapes that blocked out the stars. 10,000 bioships materialized in perfect rows, a creature larger than the biggest cities on Earth. The Void Swarm had arrived in full force, bringing enough living mass to devour everything on a dozen worlds. Admiral Keem Hannah stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, a massive warship built by welding together 50 smaller vessels into one giant fighting machine. Around her, the crew worked with calm determination. These were people who had learned to do impossible things by refusing to believe anything was truly impossible. Communications. Specialist Beijisu looked up from her station with surprise. "Admiral, we're getting transmissions on 17 different frequencies. You really need to see this." The main screen flickered to life, but instead of showing one face, it displayed dozens. Crystalline Zelthari sparkled like living jewels. Insect-like Corvani clicked their mandibles. Energy beings from the Vorthok flickered with internal light. There were even species that Admiral Hannah had never seen before. Colonel Vexera of the Crystal Wing spoke first, his musical voice carrying across space. "Earth Admiral, we have traveled far to be here today. You taught us that some battles are worth fighting, no matter how difficult they seem. We have come to repay that lesson." Captain Rotaquan nearly fell out of his chair as he stared at his sensor readings. Admiral, I'm detecting over 3,000 ships decloaking throughout the entire solar system. They must have used the old cargo routes to sneak in without being detected. Admiral Hannah felt her heart skip a beat. All across the solar system, alien ships were appearing like stars suddenly turning on. Ships from species that had declared the war lost were emerging from hiding places among asteroids and behind planets. They had come to stand with Earth in humanity's darkest hour. The battle that followed was unlike anything that had ever happened in galactic history. Instead of two fleets meeting in open space for a traditional fight, it became a wild three-dimensional war that stretched from the innermost planet Mercury all the way to the outer edge of the system. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every abandoned satellite had been turned into part of one enormous weapon. All stations, begin Solar Storm Protocol, Admiral Hannah commanded, her voice carrying to every human and alien ship in the system. Dr. Lee Soman had spent months carefully positioning everything that floated in space around Earth's sun. When the signal came, the entire solar system became humanity's ultimate weapon. Hidden gravitational slingshots hurled asteroids at speeds that could crack planets. Magnetic field generators that had been secretly placed throughout the system suddenly activated, creating an electromagnetic pulse that borrowed power from the sun itself. The swarm fleet, which depended on bioelectric signals to coordinate. Their hive mind suddenly found their communication network shattered like broken glass. For the first time in their existence, the creatures that had conquered 17 star systems couldn't talk to each other or work together. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon saw his chance and led the first attack wave of converted civilian ships straight into the confused mass of bioships. The luxury cruise liner Harmony, now bristling with weapons, rammed directly through the command section of a bioship 3 times its size. "This is for every innocent world you destroyed," he shouted over the radio as his ship tore the alien creature apart. The battle raged for 14 straight hours. Human ships that had once carried tourists now fought alongside crystalline alien vessels that could become invisible. Cargo freighters armed with mining lasers worked together with energy beings that could disrupt swarm communications. Former spa employees and dance instructors fought side by side with alien warriors who had traveled across the galaxy to join the fight. When the electromagnetic storm finally cleared and the debris stopped flying, something unprecedented had happened. The mighty Void Swarm fleet was broken and burning. Thousands of bioships drifted dead in space, their organic hulls cracked open and leaking green fluid that froze instantly in the cold. Vacuumed Admiral Hannah's final message went out on every frequency that could reach across the galaxy. To anyone listening out there, you said this war could never be won. You forgot something important about humans. We have never found a fight that we couldn't figure out how to win if we really had to. Today we didn't just save our own world. We saved the idea that some things are always worth fighting for. War wasn't completely over. Swarm creatures still controlled parts of the galaxy, and there would be more battles to fight. But everything had changed. Species that had been hiding in fear now came out of their shelters with weapons in their hands and hope in their hearts. They fought using human tactics combined with their own special abilities, creating a resistance that the swarm couldn't understand or defeat. Months later, on worlds scattered across hundreds of star systems, parents told their children new stories before bedtime. They spoke of the humans who had stood alone against the darkness and refused to give up. They learned that sometimes, when everyone else decides something is impossible, one small voice saying, "No, we can do this," can change the entire universe. Earth had chosen to fight when fighting seemed hopeless, and in doing so, had taught every species in the galaxy how to be brave.